Welcome, Proxies! It is the twilight of the release of Zenless Zone Zero's most anticipated character, Miyabi, and it just so happens she's an anomaly unit that can charge off of disorders. Given that Anomaly is one of the more opaque mechanics in ZZZ, I think it's as good a time as ever to learn about or refresh yourself on how it works. Let's start with a bit of context. All anomalies apply an effect to the enemy that lasts 10 seconds at base. We'll also be looking at damage multipliers a lot, so here's how anomaly damage is calculated. Anomaly damage cares about attack, pen, damage percent, and anomaly proficiency. Now, let's go over each element's anomaly. Fire applies burn to the enemy, which is a dot that ticks for 50% every half second for a total of 20 ticks or 1000%. Electric applies shock, which causes an enemy to take 125% damage when hit, with a cooldown of 1 second. In combat, it's unrealistic to proc it on cooldown. I have found 7 to 8 procs to be a realistic assumption, which is 875% damage. Ether applies corruption, which is like shock except with both the damage and cooldown halved. I have found 14 procs to be a realistic assumption, which is also 875% damage. Assault does 713% damage upfront and applies flinch, which causes enemies to receive 7.5% more days. Freeze freezes the enemy, and then does 500% damage when broken by you or the enemy. It also applies Frost, which adds 10% crit damage to crits against that enemy. Damage dealt by anomalies is weighted against total agent contribution. If Chingy does half a shock bar and Grace does half a shock bar, the shock damage will be half of Chingy's plus half of Grace's. Damage is also calculated for every bit of application, so that it tracks stat changes instead of, for example, just using agent stats when the anomaly is triggered. Every move in the game has a hidden anomaly application value. It doesn't change based on agent or talent level. The amount of application required on any given enemy only depends on their tier, normal, elite, or boss. Elemental weakness and resistance affect anomaly application too. Currently the modifier is 20%. Now, some interactions to be aware of. There is a 3-second cooldown on applying the same anomaly. Each time you trigger an anomaly on an enemy, their bar for that anomaly gets about 2% larger multiplicatively. Only the on-field character can trigger anomalies. Bernice's core passive is special case to bypass this rule. Technically, you can swap off to delay an anomaly proc, which might be useful if you're about to hit stun phase. Many early characters have moves that cannot trigger anomalies until they are complete. Particularly egregious examples include Piper's ult and Nicole's EX special. These interactions can lead to a lot of wasted anomaly app if you aren't careful. Finally, anomaly damage is affected by stun multiplier. At last, onto disorder. If you trigger a different anomaly while an enemy is still affected by an anomaly, the old anomaly will be instantly removed and disorder will be triggered. Disorder has a constant multiplier of 450% plus extra damage based on the remaining duration of the disordered anomaly. The duration-based damage basically just front-loads the remaining procs, except that Assault and Freeze also have a small coefficient of 7.5% per second. Because of the difficulty of getting perfect shock and corruption procs, disordering them early can be a damage gain. If you hit 70% of your procs, you lose 37.5 multiplier every second you don't disorder. If you hit 80% of your procs, you only lose 25% per second. Compare this to the 7.5% per second of Assault and Freeze and it seems even smaller. Yanagi's disorder buff adds 250% to the 450%, bringing it to 700. It is not a 2.5x multiplier to disorder damage. Duration buffs also convert to disorder damage. Strangely enough, Grace does not buff disordered shocks. Here are the interactions to be aware of. Disorder damage is affected by stun multiplier. There is a 3-second cooldown on disorder, which essentially stops you from triggering any anomaly that would cause a disorder. Disorder causes days equivalent to a 200% days multiplier. It is subject to the same weighting rules as the damage and is attributed to the anomaly getting eliminated, just like the damage. This is probably never going to be a major source of days against bosses. Unless, of course, your name is Yanagi, because her polarity disorders are disorders in all but name. They do not put normal disorder on cooldown. Takeaways. Frontloading is mostly for screenshots. You don't lose much from letting your dots tick for a few seconds unless you're just straight up not proccing your shock and corruption ticks. You do lose a lot from missing disorders, so don't go out of your way to front-load disorders at the cost of wasting anomaly application or time. Burn is the best anomaly to leave on the enemy since the dot ticks are fixed, so you should trigger disorders with burn and default to leaving burn on the enemy. After burn, the non-dot anomalies attenuate the least over time. Building and playing disorder teams. Focus on attack percent and anomaly proficiency. Anomaly characters with good multipliers in their kit benefit a lot more from attack percent because it benefits both kit damage and anomaly damage. This can be true for Pen as well, but Pen is a whole nother story. Tuning application speed is all about breakpoints. Anomaly does 0 damage until you fill the bar, which means AM does nothing until it gets you an extra anomaly. It's usually better than attack percent, but there's also no point in investing in application speed if it just leads to a dot anomaly character overriding their own dots. Dropping disorder procs is the biggest damage loss for disorder teams, whether it be from overriding an anomaly with itself, or simply from running out the timer. Alternate anomalies and pace yourself to avoid overcapping the bar. If you still find yourself desyncing a lot, it could be a sign to tune your characters or invest in application rate from something like Freedom Blues. If a fight lasts long enough for your disorder teams to stun, you should try to save some resources such as energy and gauges in order to place multiple disorders in the stun window. And that's all I've got this time around. Please let me know if you've learned something new in the comments or have any questions. I love the disorder playstyle as there's more to think about compared to stun teams since you have to balance anomalies and there's also more enemy uptime. It's also a nice change of pace from Ungabungaing with Chingy. I will be making a Miyabi deep dive as well. She'll be the first on-fielder I make a guide for, so I will be going more in depth into her combos and frame data. If there are specific topics you'd like me to cover, do let me know. Thanks for watching and see you in the hollows.